cold. Freezing cold. Void's body practically screamed from within. So cold it whined through his servos and gears, as both him and Joby marched their way up a frosted-over set of wooden stairs. Wincing from falling snow while having his hoodie pulled up and over, Void glared upwards towards a large and sturdy wooden castle that stood tall before his very eyes. Having been designed with the most gorgeous redwood bark and golden sealed rivets, the two Sparks, who now stood at each other's sides, couldn't deny its architectural beauty. Although slightly covered by the grayed out clouds from above, the massive, multi-towered force still remained as the warning beacon for the kingdom that rested in front of it, a kingdom both Void and his niece begrudgingly traversed through. So, why exactly are we looking for answers in Asgard of all places again? I thought you hated Odin in the Aesir gods. That's how you say it, right? Joby asked with a tired stare, leaving Void to turn his head and gaze upon her with tired eyes. Joby was now 20 years old and had adopted a similar robe look as Void. However, instead of whites and blues, she just adapted her darker blues and brighter yellow colors into a similarly designed spark-like attire. A sharpened crest now went down her chest with a golden outline, while a lemon-colored yellow scarf sat scrunched around her pink neck. Turquoise green horn rings blew in the wind, having been designed after Jay's necklace, as a way of showing respect to the kid that they had been searching for. Because we've run out of options. If anyone would have knowledge about the Beyond and how to reach it at this point, it would be the Allfather himself. Void explained as both him and Joby turned back upwards and eyed down a large castle door. Walking once again, the two began marching their way forwards as Joby began to question. Really? Isn't Odin like a backstabbing, know-it-all deadbeat? Are you sure there's nobody else we can turn to for answers? Sighing, Void looked off to the side and began to recall. It now marked 2 years since Jay transported Lotus as well as himself to a place that he once thought to be a myth. The Sparks had always discussed the Beyond, but it had always been treated as a fairy tale, a reality beyond reality, hence the name, a supposed place where all creation originated and started. The only real beings who had acknowledged its existence was Pofnu's clan, who were called the Great Spirits. Since her world and all of its knowledge had been eradicated by the glitch, added with really no other being out there in the Omniverse knowing what the Beyond even was, it had left Void and his family scrambling for answers in regards to breaching through to the other side. Although Pofnu could recall faint memories of her lineage's past, it was only the important things, not the small stuff like a tiny part in their culture, leaving little to no insight on how they themselves could even get there. Truthfully, the amount of options in turning for help was now limited, hence why they had returned to a place where Void most certainly wasn't as welcomed as he'd like to admit. Odin is a terrible man, a false god in truth. But he has a catalog of knowledge that goes beyond the 9 realms, other mythologies and realities. As much as I hate to say it, he may be our only hope in bringing Jay back home. Void explained in a disgusted tone as they approached before Asgard's golden castle door. Thankfully, though, I was able to get into contact with one of the better gods in this ice-infested wasteland. He actually arranged for this meeting. Real charmer, too. Void went on with a small smile as he then raised his fist up and knocked on the door. With each tap, the golden frame looked as though the ripple with water and glistened to life like a wave of lightning bugs that left Joby rather entranced to its beauty. Stepping back, the Spark crossed his arms and stood close by Joby's side in a protective way. After waiting for what almost felt to be a minute, the sounds of large logs moving and metal churning came from the other side, until at last, the doors slowly swung open, revealing which god Void had gotten into contact with. Stepping out into the snow came a large, muscular, long-haired, bearded man that was donned in green leather and wolf fur. He wore boots that shackled at footfall, dangling with metal knickknacks and golden coins. Dark gray wolfskin patch pants went all the way up to a belt that was donned in many tools and weapons, all made from either stone or hot forged metals. Tons of Nordic tattoos went up and down his arms that all shimmered with a golden, elegant yellow. This god was also tall and imposing, staring down upon Void and Joby with what were a set of glowing, Bifrost eyes. And yet, although terrifying at first glance, this god soon gave what was both a calming and inviting smile, as he then nodded down to his visitors. This wasn't no Thor or Heimdall. This was the mighty, peaceful, and noble Tyr, the Aesir's god of war. Ah, Void, young spark, welcome. Allfather has been awaiting you. Tyr greeted as he raised his left hand out to shake Void's. Tyr, it's good to see you again. How's life been with the missing hand? Void asked as he eyed a metal cup that rested over where Tyr's right hand used to be. Ah, better. But sometimes it feels as though it's still there. At least Fenrir got a good meal that day. The god of war replied with a smile as he turned and beckoned the two sparks to follow. Come, be not afraid. I shall escort you to Odin's lodge. Looking back and then nodding with a sway, Void beckoned for Joby to follow him as they both ventured forth into the great halls of Asgard. Walking behind the god of war, the two sparks took in the beautiful sight of clean walls, shiny stone floors, tables, chandeliers, and all kinds of Viking-like decorations. The citizens of Asgard that they passed by were eating, chanting, while others were drinking. Vikings both trained and fought below their feet in a lower sector, as the three of them marched up a flight of stairs that acted as a bridge. Void had only been around Asgard once, while Joby had only heard about it in stories, leaving her all the more curious as to how her uncle knew this god. You two seemed familiar with each other. How'd that come to be? The purple spark asked, as a few Asgardian soldiers eyed her down with a curious set of eyes, having never seen something such as her before in the castle grounds. Ah, yes. Years ago, a few monsters fell from the sky, and Void was right on their tail. Being the protector of these lands, I went to investigate and soon joined him at his side. Spear in hand, we both fought valiantly and emerged triumphant. Tyr explained with a small smile, along with holding his hands behind his back. Although my family may not like you, Void, you have always held my respect as a true friend and ally. I hope that Odin can give you what you need. On that note, my condolences about young Jay. The god finished, leaving Void to just thankfully nod. It means more than you could imagine. The spark expressed with gratitude as they all neared up upon a large door that read the words, Lodge, in Old Norse above. However, before they knocked, another voice that was rather cheery called from a stable above.
Ah, well, if it isn't the walking, talking, snowball-controlled automaton! Overheard you lost another family member. How pitiful.
Turning around and craning their gazes upwards, the trio locked their sights on another god. This one was more lanky than Tyr, but less on the brute side, and more on the fancier one. They wore long green robes, golden jewelry, pristine sharp boots, and even had a golden horned helmet atop their head. They had what Joby thought to be a witch's nose, which was accompanied by glowing green eyes and a gorgeous lock of black-colored hair. To add onto their appearance, they were in a laid-back, one-kneed-up position atop a support beam, looking down at the group with a crooked smile. It was the god Void really didn't want to encounter on this visit, the god of mischief themselves. Shut it, Loki. Last thing I need to hear right now is your snake-tongued voice. Void retorted as he and the others turned back to the lodge with annoyed eyes.
My word, now that's just plain rude, automaton. But honestly quite fair.
Loki exclaimed with a cheeky smile before shapeshifting into a tiny green snake, hissing and slithering off into the wall. I really hate that guy. Void gruffed out before knocking on the door. Don't worry, we all do. We're dealing with Fimbulwinter now because of him. Odin's been trying to stave off Ragnarok since Baldur's death, but we're doing our best to manage. Tyr explained as the lodge door slowly opened, revealing a massive library room that had the Allfather himself, Odin, sitting at a desk, reading something. The king of the Aesir was to Joby's surprise, not very king-looking. Rather, he looked akin to a frail old man that you'd find in a nursing home. Unlike the common, earthly depictions of Odin as his strong and fierce Viking king, he in truth was just a skinny and frail man. He had a long, braided white beard, an old, rune-marked eye patch, some blue-green baggy clothes, alongside a very stellar cloak that had soft gold glistening fur fluff upon its seams. Outside of a few jewels and golden rings, the only real notable thing about the Allfather were his tattoos and glowing Bifrost eye that looked up with a blank and annoyed stare. Ah, Void Novason, welcome back to the Nine Realms. Odin greeted with a soft voice as he shut his book, stood, and held the novel in hand. The way Odin got up was both slow and shaky. Above him, two ravens cawed and cooed as they watched with blue and yellowed eyes to their master. Allfather. Void greeted with his tired and stern voice, while Joby bowed. However, without looking, Void reached over and pulled Joby back up, not wanting to show this cruel man any respect. With a small wince and twitch of his nose, Odin, with a crooked mouth, glanced from Joby and then to his son Tyr, before getting straight to business. Well, it's pretty obvious that you don't want to be here, so let's just cut to it. Something about a boy of yours gone missing? To La La Land or something? Odin asked, as he stood before Void, passing by his height by only a mere few inches. Long story short, my son is trapped in the Beyond. For the last 2 years now, me, my wife, and my 2 daughters have been trying to find a way to reach it. Coming up empty-handed every time. Void explained as he looked off to the side with his baggy and tired eyes. So we're just running low on options. Hence why I reached out to Tyr to arrange this meeting. I figured that you would have had something within this library of yours. And I just need your help. Void explained while raising his arms towards the massive stack of literature at all sides. Well, if you were just some random hag, I would have brushed you off. But since you did help these realms once, I figured that I could donate a smidge of knowledge for your troubles. One-time get-out-of-jail-free card type thing. Odin reasoned as he placed a hand on Void's glowing blue shoulder. Believe me, I know the pain of losing a son. Baldur was... Before Odin could finish, Void flinched his shoulder back and eyed the Allfather down, who was still unsure to his nature. Was a good son. Thought he couldn't die to my wife's spell, but then Loki happened. Whole mess. But that's enough of me. Here, take this. Odin finished as he handed Void the book he was reading. A dirty, old, and brown book. This? Void asked as he took its old form and eyed it down, reading the front's Old Norse text as The Myths of Creation. Yep, it's one of the oldest recorded records of creation itself. I gazed through it briefly, and there is indeed a passage about this supposed beyond. Just check the index and you'll come across it. Odin explained as he slowly turned back to his seat. Seriously? Just one passage? That's all you could find? Void asked the old man, while giving a stern stink eye towards him. Odin was the Allfather, a man of almost infinite knowledge. having trudged his way through snow and sleet only to get a tiny book no larger than his head, caused Void's eye to twitch, and for Joby to try and calm him down. "Hey, you want the damn book or not? Best to take something rather than nothing. You should consider yourself lucky. I barely give morals even a passing greet." Odin spat as he rolled his eye while taking out another book to read. "There will be a Bifrost portal awaiting you on your way out. With it, you'll be taken back to the realm between realms and can get back home." The old man continued as Void took in a long breath and pocketed the book at his side, however, just staring. "Get out of here! Your beady little eyes are freaking me out." Odin finished as the doors opened again, with Tyr patting Void's shoulder and kindly escorting both him and Joby back out. As the three left through the door, they swiftly shut back closed with a loud slam. Shortly after this, a crystal blue portal opened by their sides, leading into the realm between realms, the easiest place within the 9 realms to open portals to different realities. These 9 sectors were worlds ruled by gods, Void recalled, worlds where they did not take kindly to outsiders. To open a portal regularly would be equivalent to booting up an old VHS recorder. It's still possible, but it would take a turtle's pace. "Well, he's certainly charming," Joby stated, while eyeing the almost cyan-shaded rift of frost. "Yes, my father as well. He isn't too fond of how you wrecked up Svartalfheim the last time you were here, Void. In fact, I still believe he holds a massive grudge." Tyr explained as he stood beside the portal in a calm manner. "Void, would you care if I were to escort both you and Joby back to your home realm? I am unsure of how truthful Odin may be in regards to you simply leaving. I fear that this may be a trick of some sort." Tyr suggested, leaving Void to simply raise his hand up. "No need, Tyr. You've done enough. Thank you." Void said with a struggling smile, as both him and the god of war shook in a farewell. "Anytime, Novason. Do tell Miss Woods I said hello, as well as my condolences." Tyr asked, as the two let go with respect for the other. "To Lady Freya as well on my end. My condolences." Void said in regards to Baldur's death, as he and Joby marched towards the portal and crossed through, leaving Tyr the wave with his stump-covered hand. As both Void and Joby crossed through, they expected to enter into their familiar multiversal realm of travel, but suddenly found themselves stumbling out into a freezing cold storm in the ridden lands of Midgard. "Gah!" The two of them shouted as they fell into the almost knee-deep snow-frozen wasteland. A mixture of both rain and ice came down upon the two sparks, as they now stood in between mountains and forestry, all having been frozen from the horrific nature that was Fimbulwinter, the start of Ragnarok. "Odin," Void spat as the portal sealed shut behind them. "Odin, you scrap sniffer!" Void screamed as he rolled around and released a spark-induced energy pulse that melted the snow both around him and Joby's feet. Covering her face from this blowback, Joby watched as her uncle huffed out a cosmic blue steam from his mouth before slowly turning and making a head gesture towards her. "Come on," he groaned while beginning to lead the way, melting the snow beneath himself as he walked. "Uncle Void," Joby inquired, as the spark rose his arm up and contacted one of his friends for assistance. "Hey, Nock, could you pinpoint the location station to me and Joby's exact coordinates? We kinda just got the boot into a frozen wonderland," he asked, as Nock on the other side replied, through a crackling radio.
Yeah, just... It'll take a few minutes given your location in the Omniverse. I'd say about 10 minutes. You guys think you can manage that?"
The mechanic replied, leaving Void the tiredly sigh in response. "Yeah, that can work. Thanks, Nock. Still don't know why they didn't re-elect you, cause goddamn, you're a national treasure." Void replied to his buddy, who just sighed.
Thanks. I'll continue to monitor both you and Joby from here. I'll keep you updated.
Nock finished the transmission, ending with a small beep. Groaning, Void lowered his arms and just trudged onwards, while Joby just asked out loud again. Uncle. Looking over his shoulder, Void's glowing blue eyes met with Joby's golden haze, where she just simply smiled, walked up, and took hold of his left hand. Doing this, she gave some of her light matter essence in the Void, which helped ease some of his strain. The older spark hadn't slept in what had to be 2 days, and Joby was growing worried for her true father's well-being. Having seen him and Jida so broken for 2 years on really shattered her heart. So whatever she could bring, it was better than nothing. Hey, it's gonna be okay, the purple spark said with a smile, leaving Void the nod in a half agreement. I hope. 2 years of constant duds and false hopes has led to this. Just a damn book no bigger than someone's first novel project. Looks like there's not even 50 pages in this thing. Void complained as he held the item up in his other hand towards the sky, looking at its brown and crusted form in all of its glory. I mean, that's about 50 pages of possible answers. You gotta try and stay positive, you know? Joby expressed with optimism as she huddled herself closer for warmth. We've all been struggling with this, but I have hope. Joby went on as Void sighed once more and pocketed the book with a tiny smile. Are you feeling alright, or is it just the light matter coursing into your brain? The bigger spark questioned as he let go of Joby's hand and pulled her into a side hug. Both. I'm still gonna devour all those chips tonight, though. So if you were expecting more sweetheart Joby, then I hate to disappoint. Rolling his eyes, Void and Joby approached a fairly large rock and then gently took a seat against it. Although both were charging with energy, Fimbulwinter was no joke. It was a powerful storm that would render most normal life forms frozen. Given that sparks were mostly a metal exoskeleton with minimal flesh for their souls, it proved strong enough to help them last even in the toughest conditions. However, that didn't mean that warmth was a constant. If Nock took an extra 10, they'd have to go into stasis mode, Void thought. How do you think Jida and Pofnu are doing? Joby asked as she tried to get comfortable upon the frozen stone. Well, they're searching within a data world of flying turtles, so probably worse than us. Probably bored, but not freezing. Void assumed as he too tried the rest against the cold stone. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Turtles are elegant creatures and could hold possibly some shell-shocking information. Joby joked while starting to freeze up, causing Void to blink and then look down at her smirking face. Did you just make a pun? The spark asked with a raised eyebrow as she fully turned to face him. Turtly not. Snorting, Void fully turned himself as well and leaned against a rock with crossed arms before thinking of a comeback. Well, aren't you just hilarious? Perhaps I got competition for the funniest spark. Or perhaps that you're too slow to win the race. Void replied with the same old corny jokes that left Joby smiling to see him rather upbeat for once. Slow and steady always wins, though, she reminded her better dad before sticking her tongue out. Chuckling, Void took in a breath and then got ready to say another terrible dad pun. But before he could, a gust of warm air hit both him and Joby, blowing them both back a few feet. What the hell? The smaller spark shouted as both her and Void fell backwards into the snow and eyed down the rock that they were leaning upon. Or rather, what they thought was a rock. As the two sparks gazed upon its white and frost-covered shade, they suddenly took notice of what appeared to be two large nostrils, flaring open and then closing with hot, snow-melting steam. What the? Joby asked with a growing sense of fear, but nothing could have prepared the sparks for what they were about to see next. From behind the massive snout opened two large, greenish-white, glowing reptilian eyes, alongside a green crystal gemstone shimmering the light from underneath a pile of snow. As these bust-sized eyeballs focused upon their surroundings, they soon locked right on the Void and Joby, and suddenly shrunk with recognition. Void, who was staring right back, suddenly felt a cold chill run down his spine. He recognized those eyes. He remembered how their skirmish ended at Ophis. Midgard of the Nine Realms, he repeated within his head. Oh, shit! Void cursed as the lands of Midgard suddenly began to rumble with a mighty earthquake. Appearing from around the lower lands, what Void and Joby thought to have been smaller mountains or hills revealed themselves to be bright, glowing green spines that melted the snow atop them away. Breaking off from the ice, a titan-sized serpentine body slowly rose upwards, shaking off heavy amounts of snow and revealing the pale, green illuminated scales of the creatures beneath. Raising its massive head up, the beast snarled with a venomous drool, while freeing its arms and clawed hands from below the terrain. In an angered huff, the massive snake, using its freed hands, pushed itself up to a tall, skyscraper-sized presence. With a look of absolute rage, the kaiju clenched its hands and boomed out a mighty voice before the two sparks. A voice that Void never thought or wanted to hear again. Nova Sun! The Titan screamed. The gem serpent, Yaru. Tears might! Joby squealed as she took a nervous step back, while both her and Void activated their battle masks. Yaru! Hey, how have you been? I missed minutes since we last spoke. Void greeted his killer while now rapidly tapping down upon his arm, specifically to create an SOS signal to knock.
Don't even start with me, boy. I knew I smelled something. Something that should have stayed dead.
Yaru bellowed as the back of her tail began to charge up with a power that went up through her spines. Hey, you are the one who did this to yourself. Come on, Yaru. I thought you would have had time to clear your head here. Void bellowed back as he swiftly and gently reached down, taking hold of Joby's hand.
I have. And I am very clear on what I want in life.
Yaru revealed as her eyes began to glow with a familiar, venomized power.
On Ophis, I was Yaru. But here, I am worshipped by all. They call me Jormungandr, the World Serpent. And you are invading my home.
She exclaimed before opening her mouth and blasting out her venomous-filled energy blast down upon the two sparks. Reacting fast, Void activated his wings, scooped Joby up, and blasted into the snow-ridden air as the blast struck. Oh God! Joby screamed while wrapping her arms around Void in sudden fear as to what was happening. She had heard the story of Ophis, about how Yaru was banished, but never expected to actually encounter the beast. To say the least, Joby was frozen with fear. Ceasing her blast, Yaru eyed down the fleeing sparks and smirked with a deep chuckle, before giving chase. Taking hold of mountainsides, Yaru pulled herself forwards with hard jerking motions that rumbled the world below her belly. As she moved, the snow melted the steam, turning the once frozen path in front of her to hot rubble.
What's wrong? Don't want to fight? Or are you afraid of me getting in your head again?
Yaru called with a grin as she released short blasts outwards, all in an attempt to shoot down the sparks. Without saying a word, Void continued the SOS message knock, who finally replied back through his battle mask speaker.
Void, sorry, is everything... Wait, is Holy shit, is that?
Nock asked as he scanned Void's surroundings, taking notice of the massive red outline of Yaru from his computer end. It is, and she's not happy. Think you can speed it up? Void asked as the large snake lunged forward with a snapping jaw. Holding Joby close, Void barrel rolled away and swiftly went down into the forest, flying in between trees and shrubs while the beast now glared downwards with a cackle.
I'll do my best. Just don't die again.
Nock replied as he quickly got to work. Rising upwards and then nosediving, Yaru slammed herself upon the woodland grounds and began to slither after Void like an average snake, seemingly toying with the scared spark.
Run, run, little orbs. Run, run, run.
She called as Void looked over his shoulder and strained. Odin, you son of a glitch! He called, realizing that he and Joby had been sent to Yaru's resting spot. Perhaps the two of them were in cahoots. An enemy of my enemy deal, perhaps. Void tried to reason. But now wasn't the time to theorize. It was time to leave. Hurry it up, Nock! Void called again as he activated his thrusters in the full gear and spun upwards through the air. What's the matter, Void? Don't want to hang out with an old friend? Naja's just dying to have one. Oh, wait. The snake joked as she twirled back up and snapped her jaws again, just barely missing them both by a hair. I see you also have a kid now. Congrats. The snake added while rising back into a curved posture. I'm his niece. Get it right! Joby retorted before activating her arm blaster and shooting upon Yaru, who didn't even flinch.
Whatever. Still an extra dish for me.
The large snake called before giving chase once again. Rising up and going around in a spiral shape, Yaru took the form of a spring that was quickly closing in around both Void and Joby. Huffing towards this, the older spark held his knees tight and swiftly nosedived downwards, just before they could get crushed within the snake's titanic weight. Snarling in her weird shape, Yaru both snapped and clawed towards the sparks as it twirled right back up, sweating amidst the freezing temperature. Nock! Void bellowed again as the sound of Yaru charging her beam up came at an alarming rate.
I got it! Fly straight ahead! Full blast, now! It'll only hold for a few seconds!
Nock exclaimed as a shaky yellow buzzing star portal opened within the air. Hang on, sweet pea! Void assured down the Joby as he blasted forwards in a bright blue ignition. As he did this, Yaru cackled once more and unleashed her venomized breath. Closing their eyes, the two sparks felt the gem serpent's heat close in around their feet. But before they could get melted to muck, the both of them crossed through to the other side, escaping the serpent by mere seconds, leaving the 9 realms and all who inhabited its region to their own loathsome. Upon seeing that her chance at revenge had left for good, Yaru slithered back around to a stop, rose her head up, slammed her tail into the world, and angrily roared upwards towards the snow-ridden sky in a pure state of primal rage. Journeys Ahead, Beyond Trilogy, Part 2, Chapter 1, Fleeting Hope. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Landing and crashing with a roll, both Void and Joby re-entered their summer-warmed home turf of Earth, albeit in a not-so-pleasant way. Stopping outside of their family cabin by harshly kicking up grass and dirt by landfall, the two sparks both groaned and slowly pushed themselves back up with their hands. Retracting their masks, they both coughed and wheezed, all while the gentle stream of water passed on behind them. Now looking up, the two sparks were suddenly surprised to the rushing greets of both Jida and Pofnu running to their aid. Both girls were in their usual mission attires, as they had worn the day Jay was lost, while not having changed much themselves outside of constant tired eyes, and Pofnu growing a few inches. Blue! Jida exclaimed with a panicking breath, as she knelt down and slowly helped him off the ground. Sister, Are you alright? Pavnu asked, as she quickly did the same for Joby. Now running around the corner with a visible patchy beard and baggy clothes, Nock released a sigh of relief and then wiped the sweat from his brow, thankful that the two of them were alright. Blue, honey, are you okay? Jida asked as her hair buzzed with a flame temptation. No, not really. Void replied to his wife, while then smashing an electrically charged punch into the ground before fully standing. With shocked eyes, Nock and the girls eyed Void as he then cracked his neck and rolled his shoulders, clearly being back in that tensed-up state of mind from before. Uncle, Joby called as the spark began to angrily march his way towards the cabin's front doors. Uncle Void, Joby asked again, as both her and Pavnu began to march forwards. Father! The young spark then called, halting Void in place, and then to slowly turn and gaze upon his niece with a shattered stare. We will find him, Joby assured towards not just Void, but Jida as well, who shared a similar face of defeat. Huffing, Void turned back around and walked into the family home, having both Jida and Nock following close behind. What happened? What was Nock freaking out about? Pavnu inquired as she slowly began to escort Joby forwards. I'd rather not talk about it, she answered as they two walked into the cabin, only to hear Void's ranting. We travel all the way to the Allfather himself, a man with infinite knowledge. What does he give us? What does he give us? Void asked aloud before pulling out the old book and slapping it on the dining room table. A book about mere myths. An old, crusty piece of nothing book with only one passage. Void went on as he flipped the book open, going through until landing upon what was only about 2 pages of information. That's it. That's all we got out of him. The spark exclaimed with fury as he then realized that the pages were stained and almost unreadable. Mother! Ugh! Void roared with a burning electricity as he turned and punched a hole right through the wall, causing wood to splinter and for Gluppy to start eating it off the floor. Oh, sweetheart, Jida called with a concerned tone to her voice. Hon, just breathe. Breathe. She continued before warming herself up and embracing her shorter husband. Breathe. Just breathe. She went on, leaving Void to gently take in some breaths and sigh and strain. I'll prepare some tea, Pavnu said with a worried tone before scuttling off into the kitchen. Cooling his energy, Void gently embraced Jida and gave her a small kiss, and then turned back to the book, all while Joby just stood awkwardly beside Nock, unsure of what else to do. I'm sorry, guys. It's just that today is the anniversary of it all, and I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. Void went on before pulling out a seat and sitting tiredly upon it. How much longer can we just keep running in the duds without losing our minds? Void went on as he took a look at the front side of the first page, seeing an outline sketch of 3 alien-looking figures. They all appeared to be levitating creatures with sharp and rounded-off shapes, no legs, but having spiked abdomens and what appeared to be singular eyes within each one of them. The leftmost figure was titled as the Writer in Old Norse, the middle called the Designer, and the right, the Narrator. Below their supposed floating bodies was the name given to this strange trio of characters. The Beyonders was what they were called, and they were all that was practically visible within the passage. Everything else had either been scuffed or scratched upon, leaving Void to just slam his head on the table in frustration. God damn it, he said while holding the back of his orb-shaped head. God damn it. He continued before Jida took a seat beside him and embraced the spark at his side, unable to really say much. She too was unbelievably tired and just wanted a sense of peace and mind, just for once. Walking back over, Pofnu poured her two parents some tea, as well as a cup for Joby and Nock, as well as herself. Drink. We'll find a way to clean these pages. Then again, I'm not too fond if this is all Aesir magic or not. Pofnu said as she herself looked at the book, feeling rather strange towards the cursed drawings of the figures. Yeah, I can call Cot and we can look into it. Nock added, when suddenly there was a knock at the door. Perking up with his baggy eyes, Void instantly grumbled and stood right up, proceeding to then march towards the door with booming steps. Void, wait! Jida stated, but the spark was tired. He didn't want visitors. He didn't want to really talk to anyone. The last time he truly felt this way was when he was sent away by his parents, when he was on his own. He hated the feeling, but it's all that was there. Reaching down, Void took hold of the knob and threw the door open with a harsh "What?" Expecting to see some kind of fan or officer outside, he instead caught the tips of purple fluffy ears instead. Blinking once and then twice, and looking down, Void was greeted to an unexpected sight. Standing at his front door were 5 kids. Together with their hands interlocked was both Sprinkles and Blippi. Beside them, ZB and AJ. And in front, holding a bouquet of flowers, was Florence Reyes, who looked a tad startled from Void's sudden shout. Hi, Mr. Novason. Is this a bad time? The wolf asked, causing Void's frustrations to fade back to a calm dad mode. Oh. Hey kids. No, not all. Just a little stressed. Please, come in. Void greeted his son's friends before stepping aside and gesturing for the trash pack to enter. Hey guys. Jida greeted with a tiny wave and smile from the table. What's up, squirts? Said Joby with an arm-crossed hand tilt towards the entering teens. Florence, kids, welcome. Said Pofnu with a comforting smile, leaving Nock to just nod. As Void eyed the children, he couldn't help but notice how much they had grown within the last 2 years. Blippi was still the art kid, having grown a few inches, being that he was now 14 years old. Beside him was his now girlfriend Sprinkles, who had recently turned 15. She still had her pink cube head and green hair, but now wore a bright red cloak. ZB looked about the same as she did then, but was now 14 as well, and a tad taller and more prominent with makeup. She still had her classic backwards cap on alongside with her roller skates. That was accompanied by a pink sweater and dark red pants. Beside her was a very much taller AJ, 13, wearing a pink button-up shirt with khaki pants. Atop his head was Jay's old goggles that he had given to the raccoon. Ever since that day, AJ had always worn and took care of the item, awaiting to give them back upon Jay's return. Then at last was Florence. The once shy wolf was now essentially the group leader, having gotten taller, grown out now lightly dyed pink hair, while donning herself in soft brown and greens for clothing. On her right ear, she wore a dark red flower, and the left, a purplish blue one in memory of both Maple and Jay, showing just how much they meant to her. Hi. We don't want to take up too much of your time, but we just wanted to stop by and give you all these. Florence expressed with a sad tone as she approached Void and handed him the bouquet of flowers. We grew these from the school garden. We knew we wanted to give you all something because, well, we don't even need to say it. ZB explained with a depressed tone while gently leaning into AJ's side, looking for a sense of comfort in the moment. Oh, sweethearts, these are wonderful. Thank you. Jida thanked while getting up from her seat and giving the kids all a combined group hug. Of course, Miss Woods. Of course. Sprinkle said as they all let go, leaving Void and Jida to just stare at the flowers with a sense of gratitude. Thanks, kids. Truly. Thank you. Void said as he took a small sniff of the plants. Roses and violets, he sensed, as Jida gently took them and held the items close, feeling a sense of comfort from their petals. I apologize if this sounds rude, but may we ask how the search is going? Florence inquired, while looking regretfully for even bringing up the topic at such a time. Although a sensitive one, she just wanted to know the state of it, to know if the boy she had truthfully but secretly liked would be back anytime soon. Taking in a breath and looking off to the side, Void glanced at the book upon the table, then back to Florence and her friends, mustering a struggling smile. We're getting there, is all I could say, while trying not to break down sobbing. It's been a struggle, but we still have hope, Joby exclaimed with a positive smile, which seemed to give the trash pack a sense of comfort. However, Void and the rest all took notice of the fact that Quinn was oddly missing, yet understood why. Shortly after Maple's funeral, Sarv and Tucker talked about how Quinn just broke off from his friends, not wanting to really talk to anyone. Her death had created a tear in their relationship as a group, so Void could only imagine that asking about Jay's return was in a vain hope to reconnect as one. Yet, he didn't want to indulge on their troubles with his own. They were still just kids. I guess hope is all that we can really rely on these days, it would seem. Florence expressed back in a soft tone of voice while shoving her hands into her brown coat pockets. Well, it's obvious and clear that something important has been going on here. We'll get out of your hair now. Take care. The wolf nervously said with a nod before gesturing towards her friends to leave. You're always free to come on by, little ones. Safe travels home. Pofnu bid farewell with a wave as the trash pack left through the door and into a nearby location station, leaving Void and the rest waving goodbye. Poor kids, Nock wordily said as he took a seat upon the nearby couch, scratching his beard. You said it. Florence has been coming by once a month, asking the same thing over and over. Just seeing the way she's been losing faith has been... Joby trailed off to silence as a wave of eerie nothingness filled the home. Hope, Void thought to himself, as he turned and picked up the book. Hope really was all that they could rely on, he thought. When suddenly, the faint TV buzzed to light with some kind of breaking report. Hey, turn that up, Jida asked as the image of what appeared to be Shallow appeared next to what Void and the others took as their respective news outlet. A reporter by the name of Winona Specs. Breaking information, folks. We have just received news that the escaped criminal Shallow Shao Kahn has been sighted within the East Coast docking bay of Aurora Sea Travel Transport, seemingly carrying a lot of lethal firepower for an unknown reason. We are still trying to determine what the long-time wanted convict is up to, but... Andy, will you focus the camera over there? The reporter said as the frame shifted to a broken-up shipyard construction site, a real mess of a dock port that was perfect for some crook to hang out at. Shallow. Void softly huffed out with an angered surge coursing across his body. Great. Void, should we... Jida asked, but suddenly stopped as her husband pocketed the book into his robe, turned on his heel, then marched out the door. Blue? Jida asked, watching as he threw the door open and then slammed it, causing the whole house to shake. Oh God. Oh, that's not like him at all, Joey Worley said as she looked back at the image of Shao Kahn on the screen. No, it's not. I should probably... Jaya tried to say, but was stopped by Pofnu. Let him release his steam on his own. We've all been struggling, but Father has been, without a doubt, taking it the hardest. Perhaps a good fight will help ease his nerves. the fox explained, as everyone wordly stared at the door and watched as a blue flash went on from outside, signifying that Void had just used one of his transport portals. Oh, blue, Jida nervously said while rubbing her forehead in a tired strain. Mother, perhaps another drink? Pavni suggested as she gestured another cup of tea towards Jida. Make it whiskey. Hard whiskey. She replied with an almost groaning stare, knowing full well that she couldn't get drunk. The alcohol would always burn up from her cosmic fire before it could take effect. But it was the thought of getting drunk that made up for it. Of course, Mother. The fox said in a nervous tone as Jida then took a seat and hung her head low, doing everything in her power to just not break down sobbing over her little boy. As the moon began to rise over the horizon, a wave of rain and storm clouds soared over the city above, dousing it all into a soggy state of sorrow. Lightning crackled down like a spider's web, while a scene began to take place at the shipyard. A few police cars were on standby, keeping an eye on the environment, searching for shallow or any sign of movement. Within one of these vehicles sat Commissioner Sankston, alongside his police dog by the name of Ranger, who was panting while looking out at the rain. Keep your eyes peeled, boys. He could be anywhere. Sankston affirmed through his radio, while trying to stare through the storm.
Sir? Did you call in Novacin for this one? I think I just saw him enter the scene through one of those little portals, whatever they are.
One of Sankston's fellow officers replied back, leaving the good cop a tad baffled. What? No, you know what day it is, right? Why would he... Sankston went on before thinking about it a little more. The last time Void dealt with Shallow was really the day his midlife crisis began. In a way, that shark was sort of the first domino to why Jay was now gone. Uh-oh. The cop muttered while glancing back at the shipyard. Oh, no. He repeated before taking a breath, grabbing his gun and Pooch, and leaving the car. Within a warehouse that had no roof, tons of old boats and support beams, Shallow stood, arranging some items within the back of an old incognito service truck. These items included weapons, large tubs of water, as well as blueprints for some upgrades he planned to give himself. The large cyborg shark was deviously smirking to himself as he prepped the items, enjoying the rain as he did so.
2 years on the run. 2 years of gathering supplies for retribution.
The tiger shark groaned to himself while tightening his stolen items down with a rope.
I swear to God, I'll show them. I'll show the city what a stain it is to the world. What's done to me.
Shallow explained through a now broken voice box that hadn't been repaired in the last 2 years.
I will drown them. I will drown them all.
The shark went on with a snarl, before biting down the rope to cut it short.
Just you wait, world. Shao Kahn will soon be the apex predator. This city will be my own. Nothing will ever stand in my way again.
The shark finished rambling for his next, what one would call, evil plan. But before he could pat himself on the back for a job well done, the sound of a distant and echoing footfall soon met his tiny ears. Turning around with wide and surprised eyes, Shallow looked off into the misty darkness and caught the sight of someone he hadn't expected to encounter so soon. Within the surrounding darkness, marching forwards with burning blue panel lines and eyes, clenched fists, and a slightly hunched bodybuilder walking posture, came forth Void Novacin.
How wonderful! Just wonderful! The last person I wanted to see.
Shallow called with rolling eyes as he readied his stance and activated his arm blades. Void, however, didn't speak. Rather, he just glared with his burning sapphire eyes that fizzled off with a blue pollen-like essence. Taking note of this, Shallow suddenly felt a tad off. He had expected to hear some type of quip or witty response, perhaps even a joke, but all that greeted him was the sight of an angry soul. Void's energy was burning so hot that whenever the rain touched his metal body, it would fizzle and steam away, rendering him completely dry. This alone set a nauseous twist to fill Shallow's stomach, as he then began to sweat.
Hey, freak show! Are you gonna say something or what?
Shallow asked as a surge of energy buzzed up and down Void's mechanical arms.
Hey! I'm talking to you! Stop getting closer!
Shallow continued, beginning to feel something that he hadn't felt in many years. A feeling of fear.
The hell are you broken? Why are you staring at me like that? Make a joke or something, you idiot!
Shallow continued on as the gap between them began to close.
Whatever! Let's get this over with!
The large shark exclaimed as he rushed forwards and swung down at Void, who quickly dodged, deflected, took hold of Shallow's right arm. Within a flash, the spark activated his Nova Blade, and before Shallow had even time to realize what was happening, there was a bright spark of light and water. And the next, his arm was on the floor with an audible clang. With his eyes widening, everything felt to slow upon Shallow. Glancing from his severed limb and then back up the Void, he caught the look within his eyes. A look that the spark had never displayed before towards any of his current enemies. It was a look of anger, hate, and a sense of lost hope. It was a billowing rage that needed to be let out, and Shallow was the unlucky soul to be the punching bag. If he was being honest, it was as though he were staring off into the burning blue eyes of the Grim Reaper himself. Rearing back around with a burning blue fist, Void smashed his metal knuckles hard into the side of Shallow, sending the large shark flying backwards and smashing into his escape truck. Denting its backside, the cyborg beast gasped out and spat out several teeth from the powerful punch. Void had always been one to hit hard, but never that hard, causing the shark to realize that the spark had always been pulling his punches all of this time.
What? Hey!
He shouted as Void then shot his arm out and latched it around Shallow's left leg. In an angered huff, he swung the big shark up and over his head and violently swung him through several wooden boats. Screaming in pain, Shallow quickly scrambled to his feet and then watched as the spark leapt upwards and back down with a glowing blue boot. Looking upwards in fear, Shallow opened his mouth and blasted out a stream of water. However, Void's energy had been so hot that the second impact was made, the water simply boiled and turned into a hot stream. Before Shallow even had time to make his next move, Void came down and crushed the left-hand side of his face with his boot, causing the bone above the shark's left eye to crack. Void was done. He had given the shark so many chances to change his ways. He had tried so hard to get him help again and again, only for him to rebound back to a world of crime, a world of hurting others. Within his state of primal rage, Void wasn't thinking about his morals. He wasn't thinking about the fact that people could change. He was done with Shallow. With each punch Void gave, Lotus flashed within his eyes, alongside his sinister laugh. Right after that was Jay's smiling little face, him as a baby, him learning to walk, them eating ice cream, all the happy memories that Void shared to the boy, who he would never, probably ever see again. All culminating in the one violent attack upon the shark who was but a fly compared to what Lotus had done to him.
No, listen! Wait! I healed! Stop! Please!
Shallow pleaded as he fell back as a battered mess, leaking with both mechanical fluids as well as a blue glistening blood. Did you stop when we pleaded for you to not hurt my son? Void asked as he reached out and ripped off Shallow's other arm, with pure strength alone. Did you stop after the countless chances I gave you? Void roared with dismay as he took the arm within his hands and batted its metal casing to the side of Shallow's face, sending the armless beast groaning on his back, unable to get up. Did you stop at the countless pleading people you devoured, Shallow? Void screamed as his entire body began to shimmer with a deadly blue hue. Not giving the monster his chance to speak, Void leapt down upon him, pinning his massive form down with his feet alone. Clenching his fist with surges of devastating energy, Void swung from his left and right, again and again, over and over upon Shallow's already defeated form. But all Void could see was red, a blinding red rage that caused tears to spill down his face. Shallow's pleading ceased as the fourth or fifth hit came, as the massive crook blacked out from the assault. But Void didn't stop. He just kept punching, releasing all of his pent-up rage upon the man-eating shark. And yet, as his blind rage continued, the sound of a voice came from behind, along with a hand to his shoulder. "Void, what are you doing?" On instinct, the spark rolled around and punched whoever had just entered the scene, but instantly fell still upon seeing Commissioner Sankson falling backwards in a pained shout. "Ugh!" Beside him, his dog Ranger barked and whined with worry as the cop groaned and held the side of his cheek that had now had a burned, bruised mark. As the two of them locked their eyes, Void's mind snapped back into its normal mindset as he fully took in his surroundings and what he had been doing. "Matt?" Void asked as the sound of Shallow's weak breathing was heard through the rain. Turning around, the spark set his sights upon what could only be described as his victim. Shallow was now a crippled mess. His face was welted up, bruised, burned, and cut. Several of his teeth were knocked out, while even one of his water tubes had popped. The fact that the shark was still alive was a miracle on its own, but it suddenly made Void realize just how far he had stepped over the line. Ceasing his energy and reverting back to normal, Void looked down to his hands that were now doused in the shark's blood. With a shaken breath, Void sent a heat wave to his palms that burned away the blood, but didn't change the fact of what he had done. Matthew, Void said as he turned around towards his friend, who slowly began to stand back up. "Matthew, I didn't..." The spark said with self-fear as the cop raised his hand up to silence him. "Void, just go home to your family. We'll take it from here," Sankson said, understanding what was happening, understanding the rage someone goes through when it comes to the loss of someone important. If the cop was being honest, Shallow deserved it. But he knew Void was not the executioner. He hadn't been since the Battle of Aurora. It wasn't his call to make. It was his code. A code Sankson didn't want the spark to break over a loss. "Go," he repeated as the other officers appeared. Looking from Matt's burnt face, then the Shallow, and then to his hands again, Void released another tensed up and terrified breath that was shivering with his soul. Turning back around, he quickly shot open a portal and ran through, feeling an overwhelming guilt for what he had done. Even though Shallow was a monster, he was still a living being with a soul. As Void disappeared, Sankson took in a long breath before speaking aloud once more. "Keep Winona out of this one. This doesn't need to be broadcasted," Sankson said to one of his officers as he looked down to the defeated Shallow, having now seen the toll of what Jay's loss had done to his friend. Stumbling out of his portal, Void, with tear-filled eyes, landed into the center section of the training field within his woods. Around him, the 3 stone pillars stood tall, while the now cherry-blossom trees swayed in the dim, rainy-filled night. Puddles littered the ground, while dew and soggy grass brushed against the spark's crumbled form as he attempted to stand back to his feet. Placing both of his hands on the ground, Void weakly pushed himself up to a shaken and gently crying posture. As he did, flashes of the past appeared in his head. Savaheim's fall, then Jida's kidnapping, Kor's betrayal and supposed death, and at last, Jay's sacrifice. Looking up, Void realized that he had miscalculated where he wanted to go, and began to grow frustrated once again. As the water above continued to smack upon his poor form, he reached behind his back and pulled out the Book of Myths. as the water washed its title. Void snarled, then turned with a violent throw, sending the useless novel forwards and smashing against the backstone pillar, bellowing out an enraged scream as he did so. Why? He asked towards the stormy sky as tears fully came down from his face in glowing blue droves. How many times are you gonna put me through this torment? Void screamed as he now pointed towards the clouds above in an angered state of mind. Is this some kind of sick game, Matira? To watch me suffer? To constantly lose the people I love? Void asked in a bellowing cry as he had now begun to question his faith to the one who made his species, having grown tired of the cycle, as Lotus oh so generously described as all those years ago. Every time I feel as though I found peace, another roadblock comes crashing in! Why? What kind of plan is that, Matira? Answer me! Void bellowed in sorrow towards the sky, but was only met with the deafening call of the storm. Angrily groaning, Void summoned a Nova Rune to his hand and instantly flung it towards the clouds above with a primal scream of sorrow. Just send another world-ending threat my way, you monster! Void exclaimed as he began throwing several Nova Runes towards the sky in a burning glow of fury. Are you even listening, Matira? Or are you one of those silly drawings? I don't care what you are! I don't care who you are! Void continued to scream as he now looked akin to a giant blue nightlight. Bring my son back! Bring my baby boy back! From his sadness alone, lightning was beginning to strike down to the world around Void, having been attracted to the energy surge given off, making the whole scene look akin to something one would see in a movie. I hate this! I hate this never-ending cycle! I hate living like this every day! I hope you're enjoying this, because I hate you! You hear me? Void screamed as several strikes of lightning crashed around his form. I hate you! Was the last scream Void was able to release as he caused a massive energy pulse to release and in turn blow himself backwards. Hitting the backstone pillar hard, Void gasped out a pained sound before simply slumping back down to the wet grass. Groaning, he shakily opened his tired eyes and glanced down to the side, taking note of the old book he had thrown. It was now opened up to none other than the Beyonder's Passage by some twist of mocking fate, with its old, unreadable pages getting soaked in the rain. Wincing, Void was so tempted to just destroy the book right then and there because of how useless it seemed. But it was then he noticed something. The rain had begun to moisten the crust upon the pages, just enough to where he could just barely read something. The spark softly gasped as he quickly reached out and took hold of the item while illuminating his horns to try and read it properly. Although hard to make out, Void was able to read something that was there, something that caused his heart to race. Travel methods? The spark exclaimed in shock as he read the page's top. Activating his battle mask to enhance his view, Void began to breathe and shake and quiver as he did his best to scan the page into his visor. Although shaky, he was soon able to make out the old Nordic text that sent his brain into an overdrive. To reach the unreachable, one must connect with the unreachable. The book said, as it showed an image of what looked to be twin characters that were labeled as reflections. To enter the impossible, one must connect with several other reflections of thyself. To spark a ritual rift. Void read as the image showed four of the same people holding hands and chanting the words, Beyondor Shostas, which roughly translated to, O Beyonders, hear our calls. With the essence and calls of connected reflections, the mighty creator shall hear their words and wish to transport them into a land of mystery, to be ones with the mighty storytellers world above. Those who have been successful have never been heard from again. Heed this tale with caution, for nothing is more terrifying that we know nothing of. Void read its explanation before it returned to a crusted and almost burnt page. Reflections? Void said to himself with both a scared and newfound hope as he looked off to the other side, seeing his own masked face in a rippling puddle. Retracting his metal plate, Void just stared into his own eyes for a long minute as the dawning realization that a chance at saving his son had finally arrived. A spell with variance? How's that? How would I... Mirror space? Void said to himself, with his eyes suddenly bulging out in shock. The mirror space! Standing back up, the spark pocketed the old book, releasing a shaken breath in the process. Tyr's might! He gasped, before turning on his heel and sprinting back to his home. The spark couldn't believe it. There was something there, and it was hope. In that moment, it didn't matter if what he read was false. What truly mattered was that they had some kind of lead after 2 long years. It's all Void could have asked for. It's all he wanted. Just something, and having something was better than nothing. Guys! Guys! Void shouted as he made it to his backyard and ran straight for his home, eager to show the others what he had just learned. Perhaps there was something out there, or someone who cared after all. With his star-shaped portal opening in a powerful ignition, Void, Jida, Joby, as well as Pofnu marched their way outwards, while Nock stayed behind to monitor them. As they made footfall into the world, Void took in a long and nostalgic breath, as he and the others were now within the nature-reclaimed realm of Savaheim. With a determined huff and book in hand, Void led the way forwards through his familiar home turf, having his curious girls following suit. Void, could you explain to us again what exactly the plan is? It was hard to tell with you freaking out. Jida inquired as she got up alongside her husband's stride. Looking over, Void gave a hopeful gaze before re-explaining his barged-in ramble from earlier. Alright, the book says that with a combined connection of several reflections of oneself, it would create a powerful charge and open a portal into the beyond. My plan is to hopefully find some variants of myself to enact this. If they're anything like me, then our powers alone may create an even stronger connection. At least, I hope. Void explained while looking back forward, feeling confident in the steps. Wait, Uncle Void, how would that even be possible? You taught us that sparks are multiversal beings. How is it feasible for there to be variants if you're the only one in existence? Joby inquired, causing Void to turn in her direction with a positive smile. That's the thing, Sweet Pea. I am the only one in this existence. But not on the inside. Void said while tapping his chest.
I beg your pardon?
Nock asked through Void's comlink, sounding rather confused. You see, sparks do have variants like any other being, but ours only reside within ourselves, our souls. Soul reflections, if you want to call it that. Void revealed while tapping his chest once again. That isn't just a spark thing, though. Everyone has variants within themselves. Inside everybody's soul, there is a numerous amount of universes and all other kinds of realities. Where else do you think deja vu comes from? The older spark said, leaving the others to think in deep thought. So, it's like reality inception. Within us all, that is strange. Pofnu stated while placing a paw upon her chest. Very much so. Hence why we're here. If I'm gonna find and try and recruit some of my reflections to bring Jay home, then I'm gonna have to go back to the source itself in order to reach my own soul. Void stated as they all suddenly stopped before a massive hole in the ground, The one that both him and Jida leapt through oh so long ago. The portal that will lead them to the mirror space. No shot you're doing that alone, Blue. Besides, didn't you tell me once before that intruding upon our other realities was a bad thing? Jida asked, recalling upon how Void pulled her away from the world where she and her family were celebrating Christmas, the day they first stopped Lotus. Closing the book and looking off to the side, Void released a cold sigh before speaking, again in a tad nervous tone. Yes, I recall what I said. But given that these worlds would be specifically projected from my soul, Void tried to explain, before falling short on the sentence. I don't know. But I'd rather risk myself through possible danger if it means getting our boy home safe. Void reasoned, as both him and Jida rubbed their foreheads as a way to ease the other. Then let's face it together. Joby confidently said with a clenched fist and stern stare, as Pofnu did the same, summoning a brand new Naginata in the process. For Jay, she said, as both Jida and Void turned, gently smiled, and nodded as well. For Jay, the spark said, with Jida soon after. For Jay.
Guys, are you sure about this?
Nock asked from his end, as Void activated his axe and replied, Very much. He stated, before leaping off the ledge and entering down into the portal, slamming his axe into the stone dirt wall as not to slam hard like last time. Following suit, Pofnu leapt as well and used her Naginata to slow herself too, while both Joby and Jida leapt in without brace. Together, the Novazun family dropped through to the other side, entering into the mirror space for a second time. Landing side by side, Void and the rest of his family knelt and then stood back up to their full heights, taking in the realm that was truly beautiful. Looking at its glass-cracked walls, mirror-like reflections, and then to their almost sketch-looking colored outline selves, the Novazun family all nodded, not wanting to waste any more time in this supposed chance that may or may not work. Stand back, everyone. For this to work, I gotta make first contact. Void's blue outline form explained as he instantly marched forwards towards the crystallized wall. As he did, Void could see Jida's orange outline, as well as Joby's pink and Pofnu's red form, watching with curious yet tense eyes for what Void was going to do. Locking his irises with his own reflection, Void stood for a moment, took a breath, then reached out, touching the glass and connecting his soul to the mirror space's front. This was the only possible way to open a portal to Void's reflective worlds. There was no other passage in doing as such. And in truth, it made him nervous. When Void was younger, the biggest rule of a spark was to never, ever interact with your reflection, for bad things could be attracted if so. As for what, Void didn't know. However, his son was still out there. He could sense it, and no elder's warning would stop him from saving his boy. Hang on, Shay. Void stated as he electrocuted the glass and ignited them all to life with a deep and blue glow. Stepping back, Void watched as swirling clouds spun within the sparkling stars, all up till the segment of glass he stood before began to shine, signifying that reality was there, just waiting to be cracked open to enter. Okay, now for the painful part. Void stated as he activated both his Nova Blades upwards with a queasy face. The what? Void, what are you doing? Jida asked in a nervous breath as both Joby and Pofnu watched with worried eyes. You see, the thing about mirror spaces is, well, you actually have to break them open to enter their portals. And from what I've heard, it hurts. So catch me if I get launched backwards, please. Void asked with a tense stare, causing the girls behind him to wince. Taking in short and stifled breaths, Void counted down from 3 as he finally mustered the strength to do what needed to be done. 3, 2, without even saying 1, Void plunged both of his blades into the already cracked corners of the mirror and was immediately surrounded by a hot red energy that turned his blades and arms into a cherry red shade of power. Void croaked in pain before biting his teeth and twisting the blades. Working as fast as he could, Void fought against the violent red surges of energy and both twisted and slashed into the mirror. He both cracked and snapped it over and over until at last, with one sharp turn, Void cut the glass free, shattering it to reveal a bright blue portal leading to one random Reflections world. Blue! Jida called with concern as Void watched the red energy fade from his limbs and collect into the center of his chest before disappearing altogether into his heart. Ow. He said while taking a breath before looking upwards towards the portal. Embracing Void, Jida craned her sight at the beautiful blue rift as well, alongside both Joby and Pofnu, who eyed it with wonder. You did it! Joby exclaimed with glee, while Void just stared in silence. Yeah, he said while pulling out the book and eyeing it down. If this doesn't work, Void said while turning towards the others. It will. Like I said, you gotta be optimistic. Joby expressed with a smile as all turned back to the portal at hand. I hope so. 'Cause if not, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Void stated as he took Jida's and Joby's hands, while Pofnu took hold of Jida's other. Come on, Jay is counting on us. It's better to try than not at all. The fox boasted as she gestured towards the rift. Taking a breath and nodding his head, Void gave a stern face and made the first step forwards, knowing that it truly was now or never. Hang on, buddy. We're coming. Void stated as they all crossed through and into the unknown world.
Somewhere in an alternate reality.
Running with heavy and hot breaths, Void ran for his life through a storm-ridden city that held only neon red lights at every which way he turned. Holding his abdomen, the spark had been bleeding out from a lethal wound, one that was stinging with a purple glowing energy that prevented him from healing. However, this Void wasn't the Novasun everyone knew. This Void was different. A reflection from a different world, an altar with a different story. Having red skin along with a metallic black and yellow spark-crested body, this Void sprinted through alleyways and tight turns, fleeing from something cruel. Entering to a fairly large alleyway, with a glowing red sign providing light from above, this alternate Void struggled on his feet, when a purple blast shot out from the darkness, striking him in the leg and crashing to the wet concrete. No. The Void groaned as he glanced around with glowing yellow eyes. Feeling fear entering his heart, the Void awkwardly stood and looked down 4 different alleyways that formed a cross-shaped center. A center that this Void felt all the worse within. For the last hour, the spark had been hunted by a presence. A terrible presence that had proven to not only be a worthy opponent, but a much deadlier threat than anything the spark had encountered thus far. With his heart pounding and brow sweating, the Void looked from all of his sides, awaiting for the beast to show up. He had been chased like an injured deer who was pursued by a wolf, a dying animal in fear for his life. This Void had no Jida, no Nock, and no soul he could turn to for help. He only had himself, but he feared that he wouldn't be enough to stop what was coming. As if to arrive on cue, there was a loud and booming heartbeat, alongside something worse.
There's nowhere else to run, Spark. We have reached the end of the line.
A voice suddenly called. A voice that the other void could only describe as a shadow within darkness. Whirling himself around, the red-colored void startled towards the back alley as his pursuer began to emerge in slow and rhythmic steps. Marching into the light, while being slightly shadowed in red lights, appeared another void. A void that was not right in any sense of the word. This other variant was tall, reaching up to 11 feet in height. His body was both fit, sharp, diamond-shaped, and armored at the chest, having a low saturated spark crest that looked to have actually been shattered off. With this broken detail, it revealed a faint red glow to where the point had once been, a slow and pulsating red glow. The left arm of this void was divided up into two segments as opposed to a long noodle arm, consisting of mechanical joints equivalent to a regular human's limb, while also being accompanied by a sharp shoulder guard to top it off. His right arm, however, was more in line with a normal void's, a rubber hose limb with a low saturated purple sphere joint, ending with a large and bulky forearm. Both of this variant's hands were large and clawed, accompanying a pair of long and rotted legs that looked like a mix and match of parts. Around this void's waist was an old cloak that had faint outlines marking its form, and yet, above it, and around the Twisted Spark's waist, rested a purple and brown sweater, an old one that looked to have lost its color over time. Dangling from his left hand was also a green crystal jewel that blew in the faint wind. Two scarves also sat around his neck, one being a dead orange shade, while the other a checkered patterned style. Yet, the most notable thing about this void's appearance was his head. A pair of 6 sharp and elongated horns stretched out beyond their normal angles, looking akin to twisted tree branches, the left larger of which looking to have actually been broken off. Upon his face was an old darkened battle mask that concealed the monster beneath, showing a holographic singular purple eye upon the visor screen instead. Like a silent stalker, the corrupted-looking void stood within the dim red light, looking akin to a broken knight that had been through the ringer of battles and constant wars. Yet he was far from stoic. A nasty vibe radiated off his body, a vibe that sent the smaller injured void into a tense panic. The way he stared, the way he just ever so slightly swayed and watched with his large and annoyed eye. It was wrong. All wrong. Worst of all was the heavy sense of dark matter radiating off his body, a form of power that the smaller void wasn't prepared to deal with.
You have proven to be quite the prey, little spark. Dare I say you have almost gained my respect.
The darker void continued to speak as him and the injured slowly circled one another, like a wolf before the doe.
You bring shame to who we are,
said the injured void as he deployed 2 yellow Nova Blades.
If I die then I die for what's right, not for whatever hunt you have against our reflections,
he boasted while getting into a readied stance.
How noble. Not like I've heard that one before.
The darker void replied as he swung his right arm out and deployed a large and dark crystal blade.
You will die just like the others, but at least you won't leave anyone to mourn,
the taller spark said as he stood and awaited for the smaller void to attack.
Your reign ends here, fallen knight,
he exclaimed before making his move. Lunging forwards, the red void clashed against the fallen's crystallized weapon, causing him to stumble a tad. With another turn, he slashed upon the dark giant, who just blocked once again. However, as he reared back for a third strike, the fallen void quickly spun and then rammed his blade into the chest of the smaller void. Gasping in shock to this quick attack, the red void's yellow eyes widened and then flickered between life and death, while the darker of the two simply eyed him with an unimpressed glare.
All too easy,
he stated before raising his other hand forward and igniting it to life. With this strange aura, the darker void suddenly began to drain the smaller one by completely ripping and siphoning out all of his matter essence. A wave of both dark and light energy spiraled out from the red void's eyes and mouth, as he quickly began to shrivel and wrinkle to dust. Before death, however, he spoke one last word before he became the embodiment of the cold nothing itself.
Monster.
He croaked before all that was left was an empty robotic body that was still lodged around the fallen void's blade.
Satisfactory, but still not enough,
he said before prying the metal body off and swinging it over his shoulder. Using his blade, the void suddenly rammed it forwards and shattered a hole within the middle of the air. Dragging it downwards, he shattered open a purple portal that led back to his residence. Without wasting a second, the void simply walked through as the reality tear slowly patched itself up from behind, leaving no trace of what had happened for anyone to witness. Stepping through, the darkness set his feet down upon a wet and sloppy floor that was wriggling and pulsating with a mixture of both dark purple, black, and red dark matter. With a grumble and snarl, the shadow traversed in an almost sickly posture, entering into what was once a supermall's lobby that was now covered from head to toe in dark matter. Vein-like vines dangled from the ceiling, which once held a glass dome roof that now shattered apart to reveal an empty, soulless sky above. With its dim light, it cast down a shine to reveal a disgusting and fleshy-looking throne that stood where a large tree had once been back in the mall's prime. Behind it, a set of duo escalators rose up to a second floor, however, shut down due to the mall's lack of power, as well as the living essence coursing inside of it. Old shops and the like all rested at the fallen shadow's sides, having once been for food, gift shops, and the like. However, now just residing with sharp crystals jutting out from their windows. Huffing and gruffing, the shadow took the lifeless body off his shoulder, turned, then tossed it to the side, adding it onto a horrifying amount of other mechanical void bodies that were set up as a mound pile. Turning back forwards, the shadow eyed down his throne and began to make his way for it, when suddenly, a voice called at his side. "Oh great, look who it is. Tell me, how did the hunt for another version of ourselves go this time, you freak?" Snapping his head to the side, the fallen void locked his sights upon a dangling cage that held a very tiny, chibi-looking void behind its bars. The chibi void looked identical to the main void's appearance when he had met Jida, except his design was simpler, more soft and round, and dare one say adorable. Huffing and then punching the cage, the shadow sent the chibi void back in a pained huff, for he was essentially a prisoner, a void with no real sustenance, but one for entertainment. A pet, as one would say. "Ugh, jeez, now that's rude," he exclaimed, while the shadow slowly walked up and took a seat upon the living throne.
Now, where to next?
He said with a thundering heartbeat, before suddenly lurching forward with a pained gasp. Reaching up, the fallen void gripped his metal chest piece with both hands and suddenly began to try and pry it open. The glowing eye in his visor then suddenly began to flash and buzz between that of a normal look and a pair of green and scared eyes. No, you can't. I can't do this again. Not now. Another voice came through the fallen's mouth, a true voice that didn't want to do this. Another mind in the same body that was quickly overtaken by the shadow. "Please, you can't keep me."
Shut your whining, Matterbirth. My hunger is calling once more.
The darkness said as he ran his fingers across his throne, then pressed down into its side, sending a glow of energy to traverse through the veins below and activate a map made of the glowing strands of flesh. Pulsating with purple shines, the lights within the matter all rose up to create the monster's very own map, not of the multiverse, but rather the vast number of worlds where void would exist, the most powerful source of matter within nearly every world he resided within. You know, when you told me that you fused shards of a mirror space into this hive mind shit, I thought you were joking. And yet here we are. with me being baffled to it all once again. The chibi void said with sadness, watching as multicolored dots appeared, all being a void that could be unlucky enough to have the devil barging into their lives.
Where to? Where to?
The shadow asked as he scratched the bottom of his metal mask, curiously looking at what was essentially a large menu of multiple items, those items being voids.
Where, oh, where shall I go this time? Where to? Oh, what is this?
Looking off to the side, the fallen void suddenly caught one of the strangest things he had ever seen. Upon the map, he watched as one of the blue glowing dots suddenly passed through a line barrier and entered into another sector that already had a void, creating the only spot on the map that have two in one region, a first for the Shadow's surprise.
Fascinating. Now why is that?
He asked, watching as two blue lights buzzed and flickered.
Curious. Very curious.
He continued to say before reaching out and absorbing the two markers' essence, giving him the exact coordinates on where to find them. Closing the map, the fallen void reactivated his arm blade, having actually been made out of a mirror space's crystallized glass. Using this weapon allowed for the corrupted being to reach the unreachable realms with ease, matter beings without flaw.
Yes. The next hunt shall be interesting.
He gently explained with the tone of a sinister snake, while the chibi void looked away in fear and shame, being unable to stop the monster from taking out another void for food. Facing the air in front of himself, the fallen soul lurched forwards and stabbed his blade with a charge, cracking the fabric of reality and sliding it down into a shattered portal. Glaring through the seams, the monster slightly smiled behind his mask and simply walked on through, heading right for Void Novasun's location.